Today on Wonder Studios, the 7 things that successful production companies do. Join us for a deep dive into best business practices in the film industry. Welcome back to another episode of Wonder Studios Weekly Update. Man, we got a really awesome video today. This is going to be the video for those who really want to understand how we do business. It's going to be a little longer because John's got some real good meat to share with us about production companies and successful production companies. So John J. Lee Jr., the Godfather, I'm going to hand it over to you. Get us going.
Okay, so we're going to answer the question today, what is it that the most successful production companies do to assure their consistent success? And there are about 36 of these that are the primary suppliers to the studios and major global distributors. And what is it? What is it, in fact, that they do? There are 7 things, and that's what we're going over today, that they do to assure. And the biggest thing, number one, is that they separate development from production, in that they finance it separately and they focus on the things that need to be done during development that dovetail off into production later. But they finance it separately so they're sure that they'll be able to accomplish it all and do it the way it needs to be done, so it will measure up to studio standards. That's the number one thing. And that's, of course, as you would hope, we are, in fact, one of those suppliers, and we follow these 7 items as well. So as we review them, you'll be able to be informed as to what we do and why we do it the way we do it.
And so that's the interesting to know right off the bat is those who have become investors, they are not investing in the production of Calculated. They're investing in the development of Calculated. Is that correct, John?
That's correct. Yeah, which typically takes 2 to 3 years. You might think, wow, people can produce a film in 1 year. Why does it take 2 to 3 years just to develop it? And like every project, it's the foundation that's set first that's the crucial thing. So development is there's a creative side and a business side. And the creative side, the primary focus is the creation of the script. And it usually takes multiple screenwriters. Once in a while, it's just one. But if you use imdb.com, very often you take your favorite picture and you look at it. One of the first things that comes up is, this is the director, these are the screenwriters. And the reason is that's kind of what tells the creative impact of the project, and the script is the foundation. So we, the script is the primary focus on the creative side, and on the business side, the primary focus is distribution, setting up distribution relationships, actually engaging with the people that's unique to each picture as to who will be distributing the picture, so that they can participate as we go through the development process in script analysis, in identifying target audiences, in considering how the picture is going to be branded and sold when it's all done. And we can then also think about how we're going to finance this picture, because the different distributors will participate in providing collateral for our bank loan, which is another part of the steps. But it's on the one side, the creative, it's all about script. On the business side, it's all about setting distribution relationships and getting everything we need set up for the financing of the production.
So
that's what distribution is all about.
Oh, go ahead, Jason, you first.
I was just going to say, I've heard so many times from people who, are in the film industry and have produced films. Hey, you're trying to get people to invest in all the risk. The development side is the risky part. We're actually producing films. So could you just maybe address that a little more directly? Because you're answering that question, obviously.
Yeah, we are. Well, we've already gone through some of these steps already. As we go through these 7 steps, we'll talk about which ones we've done and which ones we haven't. Obviously, we've set up our development company separate from production. So that's all done. We've also done what we're going to talk about next, which is the greenlighting process, which is finished. So we've mitigated as much of the risk before we invite investors in as possible. But you're jumping ahead a little bit, because the second item is the Greenlight process, and we'll talk about that right after Stephen gives us his question.
My question also might be a touch premature also, but I wanted just to let our investors know that just a huge difference, and you're going to talk about this, I'm sure, and I'm probably preempting this, but our development process, we get distribution for the film before the one camera is ever turned on, which is a totally different method than many tens of thousands of other films each year are done. They usually roll the camera first, and then when they're all done wrapping it up, and then they try to figure out who wants the film. And we're doing just the opposite.
Yeah, there are many producers, most film schools, when you're done with film school, you really have a really good orientation because of the projects you do during film school. USC is a great example, relative to the production of the film. So you've done it already, and you're hot after to do the things you know how to do, which is making the film. You've got a great story. All you need to do is script it and go get into production, and bam, when you get it done, it's going to be a honeymoon. But the problem is that there are thousands of creative producers who do not understand the business side of the industry. So they're making a product without setting up its distribution before it's made, so you can end up with all kinds of aberrant productions for which there isn't an audience sufficient for a distributor to be interested. And then they just don't get shown, or they end up at Sundance. So they do get shown there, but they don't get picked up. Sundance had, I don't know what it was this year in 2021, just in January. Some of you maybe were online for the first online Sundance Film Festival. But last year, for 2020, almost a year ago, it was about 16,000 applications that went to Sundance to get their film in. And they accept, in all categories, maybe 90 pictures. And then out of those 90 pictures, on a really good festival, you might have as many as a dozen and a half or even 2 dozen, but often it's less than a dozen. But pictures that get picked up for distribution. But if you know your chance is 16,000 out of 2 dozen even, those aren't very good odds. So you don't want to, that's not what we do, and we're not what we're talking about. So it may seem like a risky proposition that Jason was talking about, but we do certain things to mitigate risk for our development investors before we put an offering together. We picked the rights up over a year ago to this project, for instance, and did things that we're going to talk about now. Any more questions?
Sorry, John. Go ahead.
No,
we'll shut up and let you take it.
Great.
All right.
No, so the first thing, development and production separate. The second thing is that they do an internal greenlight first. So if you know what the studio does in order to qualify a project as to whether they're going to set distribution relationship with it or not, then it's smart for the production company to put it through the same kind of discipline, so that the production company knows, oh, this qualifies or it doesn't qualify. And that's called an internal greenlight. And you want to answer the question, how much is the producer's share when the dust settles, after it goes out into the world in all of its different earnings areas, theatrical, when it gets turned back on, streaming, television, even the Blu-ray, DVD phenomenon, which is still millions of dollars for each project, which is great. And music, if there is music, and gaming, if there is gaming, video games, and so forth. All of the other ancillary areas for this picture, what's the producer's share? Because that's what the investors will participate in. And how does that compare to the cost of the picture, so-called the negative cost? So if the picture is a $50 million picture and the producer's share of income is $40 million, it wouldn't be a good idea because you'll get it all done. You'll go through the brain damage of making the film, distributing the film, and be celebrating you got $40 million back, but you're still 10 million shy of how much the picture actually cost.
Right.
So
right.
it's called an earnings to cost ratio, and that's what the Greenlight is all about. So every production company first goes through this process to do as close as they come. And the studios are really, really, it's a science for them.
So real quick, John, if for the listener who's been listening intently this far, they probably just said, all right, so what's the earnings to cost ratio on calculated? Do we have an answer for that? I know we did have an answer for that.
We do. We don't tout it around so that our investors hold us to the high point. But here's the bottom line. For most production companies, if it isn't a 2-to-1 ratio or more, they don't produce the film.
Right.
Even though they really, really like the story, they say, it financially
just not
doesn't
make money.
close. Exactly. So if it's in that same scenario, if the production cost was $50 million, producer's share is $100 million, it just made it under the wire. Okay, we'll go with it, maybe, or we won't. And calculated was significantly over that. So we have a low, medium, high, and breakout. All of those that we do when we estimate what the picture might make, because in fact you don't know what's going to happen. There could be a plague breakout. Yes, in the middle of that. But anyway, so you do that just to make sure that. The earnings to cost ratio, the Greenlight, is done against the low. And so our low is greater than 2-to-1, and our high is way greater than 2-to-1, obviously, anything north of that. So I didn't give it away. You still want to know, though, don't you?
I'm sure everybody still wants to know. I just don't know whether on a WeFunder platform we're allowed to give projections like that. So,
yeah.
But just know that our greenlighting was over 2-to-1 on the lowest estimation.
That's exactly right. So the internal Greenlight is the second thing out of the 7, just crucially important. And that was done before, that was done as part of us deciding that we were going to do the picture as a production company before we put the offering together and went on WeFunder months before. Okay, number 3 is production financing. And production financing for these companies almost always comes through a bank. And that is really differentiating. Most producers, independent producers, when they hear that, if they're not using this kind of model where they separate development and production, they're like, what? What bank is this? We want to find out. We want to go to them. And banks don't take risks. And they don't take risks in entertainment either. The largest lender is Chase. They only do multiple projects. So they do packaged loans and give line of credit for those. But there are several banks, almost 24 at the moment globally. And they're very competitive because there is low risk, because we give them collateral in the form of production incentives that we're given that are easily liquidated by the bank, or we give them license agreements that are liquidated at the time the picture is done. So when the studio or an international distributor, streamer, whatever, when they receive a lab release letter, according to the license agreement that they've signed, that's when their license balance is due. They usually put up 10%, 90% is bank finance. So that's how we use bank financing. The bank also is not going to take a risk that we're actually going to finish the film. So we have a completion bond company that's involved. And the bond company is multi-layer beneficial to us because they know what actors and directors are bondable, because sometimes they have personal situations that make them not bondable, and what changes are going on with licensors. Big companies that may be a branding company, like a car company. BMW's been the biggest for some years. Or who's going to own the delivery landscape in the film? Is it going to be FedEx or UPS or whomever? All of those kinds of things, because the bond company is involved in putting together part of the legal documentation for the bank loan. They actually are up to date always on that because they deal with dozens of pictures a year. But bank financing forces us to set our relationships with distributors and other people that are going to give us the collateral we need to finance the film, as well as the completion bond company. So this third thing is really important. It isn't just that the cost of money is low, which is a motivation to use a bank, but it forces us into these relationships early because sometimes electronic games earn more than the motion picture itself. And they take as long to produce as the motion picture does, sometimes even longer. So if we're going to do those, if we're going to really exploit this product for all it's worth, we need to really ratchet all of that stuff in and have it rolling during development. So when the picture is done, everything else can fall into place. The novelization, which of course is already done on this picture for the first one, and all the other items.
So if I may, Jason, you first.
Sorry.
You first.
So John, I'm just thinking from the perspective of the investors, and I'm loving this. You know, I'm sure they're loving this, but in the back of my mind is, okay, but you know, when I go to get a loan, kind of depends on my credit, and sometimes I get them, and sometimes I'm rejected. So, could you speak to that just a bit in terms of what is the likelihood that we might not get this loan on calculated? And then
within the answer to that question, just throw this in there too, because you use the word collateral, and the viewer might be going, well, "What in the world is collateral? I don't have you get a mortgage, the collateral is the house, you get car loan, the collateral is the car. What's the collateral in a nutshell?"
Well, there are 12 separate categories actually that we go through, and there's a whole funding worksheet that we use every project, and we go through these to find which ones are going to be most beneficial for us, which ones are the easiest, which ones will create the lock-in and make the bank loan the most beneficial. But there's so much money spent. For instance, that $50 million example, and calculated maybe in the $45 to $65 million range is what we're estimating now. Till we get the script, we don't know for sure.
For the production budget.
For the production budget, yep. And so everyone wants this money spent on their turf. If you can cheat Shanghai, but shoot it in Taiwan, they may give us a 45% production incentive, so we can get 45% of the budget from them, for instance, instead of doing it in Shanghai. We want to do it in Shanghai, but if they can cheat it, make it look like that, and Shanghai's only giving us 25%, then maybe we will do it in Taiwan, for instance. Same thing with companies like an Audi, that we might go to and strike a deal with them, and they will give us collateral that we can use as part of our bank loan. So
that kind of thing happens when, like, you're watching a movie and you notice that all the cars in the movie are BMWs, or all the cars in the movie are Audis. There was some
unless they crash and burn.
Yeah,
and there's some other brand. Yeah,
there was some kind of a deal struck with that particular automaker to give some collateral for that film.
Yeah, that's right. Co-branding, and it's real good. Sometimes we get it in cash. Sometimes we get it in branding. Actually, advertisements that they're running, that they sell their car but show the film in, but they're ready to spend $10 million in a given territory. When the picture is released, that will benefit us that way. All kinds of arrangements are made like that. And then actual licensing. So China will be a big licensor for this picture. We've already, for two of the largest distributors in in China, we've already had a pitch meeting with them, gotten really strong responses. But those licenses are used as collateral. So, and they're due and payable when the picture is delivered, which is that lab release letter, which gives them access to the picture and all its elements.
Cool.
So, yeah, that's banking. So the fourth thing is that they're real global strategists in this.
You didn't answer my question.
Well, what's your question?
If mine was what, for a normal person who gets a loan, they have to, have a good
credit.
What's the likelihood that we might get rejected on getting that loan? Or is it 100%? We're going to get it, or 99%, or how does that work?
Yep. So one of the first things we do is approach a completion bond company and tell them what our plan is. We plan on using this collateral for the loan, discounted by these amounts, or reserved for interest and so forth. And what do you think of that? What do you think about this picture being shot in one of these locations and so forth? And they give us a clearance from that. So when we go to the bank, which is the next stop, and meet with the bank, we say, this is what we're thinking about. We're thinking about shooting this time of the year. We're going to use this completion bond company. Are you okay with them? And this short list of directors, this short list of actors that we're thinking about. Everybody on board? We're all feeling good about this? And they basically say, yeah, absolutely. It looks like your budget is about right on the completion bond side of things, on the bank side of things. Yeah, this collateral is just fine. Or they might come back and say, yeah, but if you're getting a license from China, these are the companies that we clear and have bank relationships with there, and these are the ones that we don't. So we're informed about these things way in advance. It isn't like we show up at the bank at the end of development and say, well, what do you think about this? Months before that, we've already met with them. So we take care of the surprise, and the bank has absolutely no risk. So they're very motivated. They don't read the script. They don't say the second act is a little slow. They're concerned about material so it doesn't embarrass the bank, but that's all. Outside of that, they just want to make sure they're going to make money and they're not at risk. That's their inventory. It's cash.
So before we move on to number 4, John, I'm here in my newly painted office, in a gray. And
it's beautiful.
And John is in a tiki hut in some,
faraway land.
I think I can hear some background noise. Let's stop and listen for a second. Let me amplify it a little bit. Is that an elephant I hear? I hear a toucan.
Stop.
Oh man. We all know John's not in a hut.
It could be. That might be it. That may be my veranda you're looking at.
All right. Number 4, John.
Okay. Wow. What a segue.
Sorry about that.
So to give you an example of why global territories and why this deserves its own point out of 7, the average English-speaking motion picture only makes about 30% from the United States. So 70% is earned outside the United States. So for us to only think about North America, which includes Canada then, would be real short-sighted of us, because most of the money's coming from elsewhere. So the number 4th item is that all of them are really global territory focused, and they want to know if China is the largest earnings territory outside of the U.S., which it is. They want to know what's the value in China. Japan would be next after that. France would probably be next after that, and so forth. But they want to know where all these territories, where they weigh in. And what do they have releasing at the time that we may be releasing? And which distributors in these territories might handle this unique project that has this kind of target audience and so forth. So that's the fourth thing. They, during development, will not only identify who these people are, but they will, what are you smiling about, Jason? they'll have, they'll begin to connect with them, let them know about this project, meet with them during film festivals, talk with them at other events, even if it's by Zoom, and get this in their heads and on their release schedule as early as possible.
So just real quick for our viewers, and we talk about this so much amongst ourselves, we don't think that people don't realize this. We're shooting for a global market on this film between 2.4 to 4 billion people to be viewers of this film. We're not shooting small time. This isn't some, we're just going to distribute it to a few theaters in the States. We're shooting for the globe.
That's what makes me smile, John.
I see. Okay. Yeah. And it's exciting to be involved in a market like that. And it's a big responsibility. And these producers, most of them have a sense about that and the impact that their projects have on the cultures around the world. It's an amazing stewardship. And we certainly take it seriously. So number 5, we're getting down to it. Woohoo!
Yay!
We're almost done. So 5, each of them plans and prepares and engages the right sales during development. And you might think, oh yeah, well, you need to do that for your bank financing, get that set. But it isn't just that. It's so that the branding and promotion begins early. So if the picture is going to begin a year before it's ready for release, even before it goes into production, there are press releases that these exhibitors and streamers and others are doing to talk about projects that they have coming up that are substantive projects, which Calculated would certainly fit into that. So we get involved with them so that we can set strategy with them and begin to move this forward. And so they do this as soon as they feel like they have skin in the game. So kind of like most of you, you may have been interested in this project before you made your investment, but now that you have your investment made, it's like, wow, what are they doing now? And are they on schedule? And how are things going? Well, it's the same thing. We set up with Metropolitan, a big distributor in France, and all at once the brothers who run this big distribution entity, when they make a commitment, then they begin pushing the brand as well. Whenever they talk about themselves, this is part of who they are. And so they make sure that the press releases happen and things are rolling. And that's crucial to it, the whole thing. Even if we don't have or use their collateral, the relationships are crucial. So number 6 is that each of these production companies, each of these producers, they participate in the project's branding strategy. This may sound like an overreach. I mean, who would second guess a studio, any of them, Sony, Universal, WB, Disney, in their branding strategy. But frankly, they have, the smallest of them have about a dozen pictures a year. The biggest, Warner Brothers and Disney, have 2 to 3 dozen a year each. So that's 2 or 3 a month. The producer typically has 1 or 2 a year projects. So we can't roll the dice like they can. we feel much more possessive and ownership around this. This isn't a niece or nephew. This is our child. Yeah. Yeah. And so we want to ask them, what's the reach and frequency of your media buy? And what time of year? And I see you have another project. It looks like it might be treating the same audience, the target audience. So are you doing this as a strategy because if you have 2 of them in the market at the same time, You can use them to feed one another, and you'll really kind of seize on that audience for this 3-week opening, or,
Let me interrupt you
but
real
it
quick.
makes them accountable.
The reach and frequency. So reach is the number of people that are reached by a particular ad or push or marketing, and then the frequency is how many times that person is reached with that.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. So the reach is of this target audience, and it might be primarily 15 to 24-year-olds, just saying, the real deep target on a picture. So if that's it, how many of them are there? And we don't care how many are reached in general. We want to know how many of these are reached. So that's reach.
The demographic.
So and you want to have about 80% of them reached before a project opens, whether it's on the screen or on your home screen. And the frequency is just as Stephen said. So you want 80% of them to be reached at least 8 times before a picture opens in whatever venue.
Which is why you see ads.
If that's your objective.
Which is why you see ads for a film, 6, 7, 8 times. You go, oh man, I need to go see that film. And that's the whole purpose of the marketing, is to, because if you see an ad one time, you think about it a little bit, you're not quite committed yet.
Exactly right. So reach and frequency, which when you combine them is called gross rating points, which is not what we're going to get into here. But anyway, but that's important. So all of them get involved in that as well. That's number 6. Number 7 is each of them is a balanced producer, meaning that there are 3 things that they keep in balance. One, the first, crucially, is the audience. And this is how almost every discussion about how things are going to go, from earliest in the script to during production and when a picture is released and so forth, is settled. It isn't, well, this is how I feel and this is why I feel that way, because it's interesting. A producer or a director or an actor might feel that way, but everyone has to buy in that the audience, in fact, has the final voice. So how does the audience feel about this? How do they respond? And so balanced producers have 3 things that they keep in balance. The first one is the audience, and it always has the preeminent position. Second is creative. There are themes to pictures, and we feel passionate about those themes. With the audience to feel something, maybe to learn something as well. But we want to feed the audience and somehow lift them up, make them more able, make them glad they saw it because it fed them deep inside. It may have kept them really excited. It may have been a real swoon love element to it, and whatever. It may have been really funny in some aspects, but it's that feeling thing. So creative is number 2. Number 3 is the income. And we can't divorce ourselves from actually how the picture is going to perform from a financial perspective, and is it hitting those marks? So those 3 things, it's what makes them a balanced producer. And there are producers that just don't believe in it. There are producers who say, no, it's all about creativity, and frankly, I don't care, because it's part of the cultural statement, and it's going to be what people, after I'm long and dead and gone, they're going to look back on this picture and say, wow, that was really something. But frankly,
it's kind of the fallacy of a particular director or writer who wants to write way outside the box because it's what they love and they feel inside, but they don't really take into consideration what the audience will actually appreciate. But to them, it's going to be successful because they love it, but they're not considering everybody else. That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Which affects the profits as well.
Yeah, affects the profits as well, right?
Yeah, it's all about that. So we're balanced producers. These 7 things that we just presented, that's our mantra. We stay well within that framework of things. So you can appreciate how we're managing things and what's going to happen, what all is going to happen and is going on during development. It's that. And why we're so excited that we're where we are at this point, about to hit our first rolling close, which will happen next Friday, Jay?
The 26th?
Okay.
Yeah.
Must be next Friday. And this first rolling close will give us enough money to engage our studio level screenwriter.
Yeah.
And we couldn't be more excited about that. And some of the videos that are upcoming will be dealing with that. We'll be talking about the people we're looking at, some of the pictures that they've been involved in, and you may have your own queries about them.
And we have mentioned that in previous videos that we're getting the rolling close to do the script writing process, and it's just taken WeFunder a little bit of time to get that happening. We probably 3 weeks ago we mentioned it, and it hasn't. It's happening in the next few days, so there's been a little bit of a delay on that.
WeFunder has doubled in size since last year. they're going through growing pains, but they're a great family.
Yeah, they're fantastic
to be with.
They're a great family to work with.
Yeah.
John, I just thought of this. As someone is still watching this video, that means perhaps they're very interested in the production process. I just thought, give a little plug. Where can they go to really dive deep and learn more?
This video.
No. Yeah. Well, yeah. This video will be on, of course. But you should be able to get it. This really sounds like a plug, but it isn't. I wrote a book because I discovered there weren't any good books on the business side of the film industry. So there's a book out there called The Producer's Business Handbook. If you want to, the best way is to just get it from your local library. If you live in a major city, it should be there. So it doesn't cost you anything. And you can thumb through it and look at certain chapters that are especially interesting to you, but you can get a lot of information from that. It talks about all the things that we've discussed here and a lot more. It's available on, of course, Amazon and other areas. It's in its 4th edition. It's only in English and Japanese at the moment. But you're welcome, obviously, to go on there. You can go on Amazon and read, I think, the first chapter or 2. So anyway.
Yeah, additionally, I'd also like to say to our viewers is, in this update on WeFunder, you can comment, and once again, we mentioned at the beginning of the video to go ahead and comment. If you have a question, you're just dying to know that you don't feel like it was covered enough in this video, go ahead and ask that question in the comments below, and we will definitely get back to you with that. We nailed it, John. All 7 points. All 7 points in under, I don't know, under an hour.
No!
I really have no idea at the moment, but
okay.
We just kept interrupting you, so. Well, yeah, this has been fun hanging out with our investors again, or our potential investors. And thanks so much for joining us today. John, have we wrapped it up? Are we good to go?
Yep.
Sweet. All right. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. And we'll see you again for another video update coming in about a week or so.
And thanks for investing.
Wahoo.